from the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Today is Sunday, June the 26th, 2016. This is David Cline from the History Department at Virginia Tech and recording an interview for the Civil Rights History Project of the Southern Oral History Program of UNC, University of North Carolina. Also the Library of Congress, and we have Guha Shankar with us today. And also the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. Behind the camera today we have John Bishop of Media Generation and UCLA. And we have a guest with us who we are quite honored to be visiting today in El Monte, California, Gloria Arellanes. And if I could ask you, this is the one time I will coach you at all, if you could introduce yourself for the camera, a full sentence, my name is, and where and when you were born.
My name is Gloria Arellanes. I live in El Monte, California, have lived here all my life. I was born in 1946, making me a 70-year-old. And that's quite an accomplishment in my family. People don't live too long. But I went to school here. I went to East LA College briefly. Was not interesting, wanted some life experience.
So I know that we are in the house that your parents bought, and I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, even before them, about your people and the history in this area.
I am a Tongva elder, and my ancestors had this area. This was the village known as Hautna. It's the place of the willow. And there aren't too many willows. They're more near where the original mission site was. There's still a lot of willows out there. Of course, development has removed everything that was natural in this area. But we had lived here, well, now it's 65 years I've lived here, and my parents were living in East Los Angeles. I came out of the Maravilla projects, and my grandmother lived on Metnick and Dozier. So my father had a little wrought iron shop right there in East Los Angeles across the street. So we were always right there in that area. And on his GI benefits, he came out here to El Monte to get this home and went through the process of escrow and everything. Everything was approved. And on the last day, my mother came to sign. And my father was very fair-skinned, very light, hazel eyes. My mother was very native-looking. She was native. She was a Tongva, very dark, black hair. So they had not seen my mother, but they were dealing with my father. Arellanes was not, and still isn't, a very common name. So they didn't know what, they thought he was Greek, I think, you know. And when they saw my mother, they said, oh, no. We have to take this house back. And my father went into a rage. He was a businessman. He was a wrought iron person, so he knew how to run a business. He was self-employed. And he says, I will sue you. You have my money. You have put me through escrow. You are not taking this house back. And so they couldn't do anything about it. So we moved into this house. And as I grew up, I remember my mother telling me that there was problems buying the house. They didn't want to sell the house, but she didn't give me the reasons why. So about 3 years ago, I became involved with the South El Monte Arts Posse group out here. They wanted to do an interview with me. Well, a young man wrote an essay, and they wanted to meet me, and I spoke to a group here. And it was then, after I started reading some of their articles about El Monte, that I found out you could not buy homes or sell homes to Mexicans and Asian people. And that was the reason why they tried to take the house back. And I was really shocked. You know, I didn't know. And other people say, oh yeah, that was really common. And I just had no idea, you know, because I wasn't, as a child, I was never raised with any kind of racism or forms of hatred of people, just, you know, because of their color or their looks. And so to find that out was very shocking for me, even though afterwards when we lived here in El Monte, it was predominantly an Anglo community. I did experience a lot of racism. And into high school we had race riots where only the Chicanos would be arrested. And we were made fun of, you know. We were embarrassed to eat our bean burritos, you know, and people kill for bean burritos now. They love them, but that's how racist it was. And when we walked down the street coming from high school, we stayed in large groups because we were yelled at and things were thrown at us. And, like I say, we had fights in the high school,
So how did your parents identify, and what did they teach you about your own identity?
They
As a
confused
little
me.
kid?
They confused me because my dad would say, "You're Chicano," and I would say, "No, Dad, I'm American. School tells me I'm American." "No, you're Chicano," and I would, "What, Dad, I'm American." And he said, "No, you're Chicano." So it was very confusing as a child. And then as I got a little older, I had gone to see one of my mother's cousins, and she had all this family genealogy because I had heard we were Native, but nobody would talk to me about it. And so she showed me genealogy. She showed me photos. I have an uncle who wrote books in the 20s and gave a lot of family history, even put a rice pudding recipe in his book. And he was a horseman. So he eventually went up to Bakersfield, and he said a lot of the families from here, to get away from the mission, went to Bakersfield. And he was considered a vaquero, an Indian vaquero. And his names were always buckaroos, about buckaroos. And when I told my mother this, she goes, "Don't listen to her. Don't listen to anything she tells you. You are Mexican. Don't ever say you're an Indian." And it was so confusing. And I go, "Well, why would she do that?" She goes, "Just don't listen to her." Well, as an adult and doing my own genealogy, I found out I was Tongva, or Gabrielino, as some people refer to us, from the San Gabriel Mission, from this area. We have always lived here. My mother's family came from the Alhambra area, Pasadena, Alhambra area. And she carried what we call cultural trauma because they were punished for being Indian. When the Spaniards came in the 1800s, they put them to work in the missions, and they separated the families because the men didn't want to come in. So just the women and children were forced to come in, and they were not able to pray in the manner that they're used to praying, dress as they wish to dress or accustomed to dressing, speak their language, dance, ceremonies. Everything was taken away from us. And women wore tree bark skirts. Okay, we have beautiful climate in California until climate change destroyed it. But we didn't have to dress from neck to the bottom of your feet. This is what the Spanish and the missions did to us. They wouldn't let us dress in our customary way, and therefore we had to change the way we were, and we had to serve them, take care of their children. We were their nannies, I guess. And history always put us as the romantic missions. It was torture for us. People died in huge amounts of disease. You can go to the mission, they have mass burials. Everybody else gets individual plaques and so forth, Tommy Temple and so forth. But you look, thousands of Indians were buried here. They died of measles or whatever disease it was, chickenpox. So it almost destroyed us. And history did say we no longer existed, we were extinct, and that's not true. And it seems like every day I meet, not every day, but when I go to some kind of a gathering, I'll meet somebody new who has just discovered they are Tongva. It's very exciting, So we have a fairly large tribe now, and we've been able to get some language back. We've gone back to our regular regalia, and we're learning language. We'll never have a full language. There are no fluent speakers, but we can say, bits and pieces, because J.P. Harrington recorded a lot of that. So it was confusing growing up.
Yeah. And how about your father's insistence on, your father had a strong Chicano identity.
Yeah.
And you carried that into high school?
Yes, into high school, yeah. And it's kind of interesting because he was such a conservative man. Him and I clashed ideologically, He just, it was funny because that's what he identified me, Chicano. And yet he was a businessman. He belonged to the Elks Club, the Masons Club, you know, and I didn't see him as a Chicano, you know. It's kind of interesting. And my mother just kind of went along, you know, with things. She never, you know, seemed to say, you should be this, you should be that. You know, my father was more wanting me to he wanted to see me be successful, but yet he wanted me to be married and have children, you know. And it was very confusing for me sometimes for my dad. And he was hard to communicate with because he was raised, his father died at a young age and he had to take care of a large family. And I think that made him very hard sometimes. You know, he wasn't an affectionate man. He wasn't, you know, like my mother. My mother was completely the opposite. She was, you know, up until her death, she was my best friend, you know. So, but it was hard growing up with my dad. You know, although I know he loved me, he provided for us very well. You know, we were never hungry. You know, we weren't, I mean, this isn't a, you know, a castle here, you know, but it was a home. And he didn't.
Well, he brought you all out here seeking
Exactly.
something better than.
Right. And he wouldn't let us speak Spanish. I had a brother. He would not let us speak Spanish because he didn't want us to have an accent. So had he lived long enough, he would have known that's a benefit to be bilingual, trilingual, you know. But that didn't happen, and tells you kind of the thinking of those days, you know. And his family was traveling musicians from Chihuahua, and they traveled on a burro, a donkey, okay, and they were musicians. And one of my uncles was, I mean, the house they lived in, it was a castle, big house in East LA, and they had a organ with all the pedals on the floor and a whole pipe room. That's how big that house was, and we weren't allowed to touch that, but Gloria used to like to go in there, push all the buttons and pump everything, and then I'd hear, "Here came Grandma," you know, and I'd run, you know, and I'd go to that pipe. They said, "Do not go in that pipe room." It was dark, and I used to just open the door and then push the pipes just to hear the sound. It's quite amazing. And
yeah.
it was such a dinosaur, nobody would even take it when she passed away and they were cleaning out the house. And there was a baby grand piano in there, and those square kind of guitars, I think they're Japanese, you know, some kind of a string instrument. Yeah, that was my uncle. He was a musician.
So what about the sort of first stirrings of a kind of activist Chicano identity for yourself?
For myself, that was in high school because of the racism that we're exposed to. We kind of stuck together, you know, for protection. And one of the parents, she actually lived around the corner, she would say, you know, come over to my house. You can, you know, let's start a youth council. Let's do things. And I have pictures in my collection. No, those are not in my collection. Those are my personal things. But where we were doing the stroll, you know, the dance, she would let us play music and you know, hang out there. And that would take us to do community type activities. And I think that's where it started for me. And then the high school, eventually there was a counselor who took interest with us because of all the fighting that was going on in the riot, I call them race riots, went on, and only the Chicanos were being arrested. You know, sorry, I went blank. Sorry.
In the high school, yeah. The counselor who took interest,
Yeah, this was, Counselor Jack Barton took interest in us. So he let us have meetings, and we talked about these things. Anybody in the surfers, that's who we were fighting. Sounds kind of funny now, you know. But in conversations, it started as screaming at each other, and the hatred was coming out. And then afterwards, you just kind of, you lose your wind, and you realize that's just a human being sitting over there. And, you know, it's like, and then the talk begins. And then we did several of those, and we went to the junior high schools to get the young kids involved to not come into the high school, because when you go from junior high school to high school, it's a whole different population. It's larger, it's, many backgrounds, and it was difficult. And I remember in schools, even the teachers, when you raise your hand, you're all enthusiastic. I know the answer, I know the answer. And they look at you and they just, that teacher does not like you. I didn't know it was because of who or what I looked like. Those are things I learned later. Plus, I'm 5'8". I'm very big boned. I weighed almost 300 pounds when I was in high school. So I was bullied a lot. And that made me kind of tough, because all through elementary school I was harassed and made fun of. And I think I just reached a point in my 20s when I said, you know what? I don't care what you think about this. If you can't see this and you can't see this, I don't have time for you. But I had to fight my way through, and people were afraid of me because I was so big, or just ridiculed me. And it just makes you a fighter. And I think that's why it was easy for me to go into the Chicano community in the militant area, because I was a fighter already. I was very mouthy. Never had to hit anybody. Never, because people were afraid of me. All you had to do, boo.
You just stand up.
Yeah. And I did. Oh, I love body language, and I did use my size to intimidate. Honest truth.
Okay, we're back again.
We were talking about high school, and we were talking about your size and these questions, and being a fighter inside, determined person, and how that may have benefited you or drawn you in to the more militant side. And so, if you could take us from high school and into the years just after that, and into the movement.
One of my first jobs was the YTAP program, Youth Temporary Employment Project. And I worked over in South El Monte and worked with young people, and did the activities that we did. And then from there, I worked a regular employment job, which was horrible, a factory with satin-covered Christmas balls and artificial flower arrangements. And then somehow I got over to East LA in the anti-poverty program, Neighborhood Adult Participation Project, NAP. And the other thing I was doing was cruising Whittier Boulevard socially for our social activities. We'd load up from El Monte and we'd go down the boulevard and just have a ball. And I don't know how I met these people, and I don't remember who it was that I met, but they invited me to go to a coffee house on Olympic Boulevard. And we were like, well, why should we go over there? Oh, you'll really like it. It's really nice to go and just, sit down and talk to people. So we went, and this was a Piranha coffee house, and it was completely dark. And so we're like, I don't get it, Well, somebody came out and said, oh, come in, be comfortable, And normally somebody should be afraid to go into a dark place. I mean, we weren't as threatened as people are crazy now, a little bit off balance, that I wouldn't dare walk into a dark building now. But it's young people, hey, let's go party, And we went in there. People were in there, but they were in the dark. And then it didn't take long to see why. There was the sheriffs going by with their floodlights shining in the window, and people would just kind of sit back. And it was at a time when the Brown Berets were being formed, and it was a Young Chicanos for Community Action group. And they did have a legitimate coffee house, and it was just going out of business because of the harassment, and because it drew young people, basically. So talking to these young people, I was hearing things that I had never, ever heard. And so they said, would you like to join us? And they weren't Brown Berets yet. And they just said, would you like to join us? I go, let me learn a little bit more. I don't not quite understand everything. It took me 3 times to go back and say, okay, I'm ready. And from there, it was Brown Berets, Good group of young people who wanted to make changes, who were tired of the police brutality, were tired of not being able to go to college, were tired of not getting good jobs, living in poor housing, knowing that people around them, their own family, needed health care and didn't have that. So these are all things that, touch my heart, and, I have passions for. I developed passions at that time, actually. I mean, I was learning. And because here I came from El Monte and I was in a comfortable home, I had food. My dad wanted me in college. He was working to put me in college. And I did go I went to one semester at East LA College, and I told him, Dad, it's just not for me. I felt like everything just went over me. And it didn't make sense to me, and I needed to get that life experience in my case. So that's what I started doing. And from there, it was protesting everything that was unjust. And then learning other groups that were doing the same thing. In high school, remembering, what happened in the South to the black people, and the brutality that they were exposed to and suffered and were killed for.
So what year was it roughly, those first meetings at the coffee house?
Oh, in the 60s, probably middle 60s. I'm real bad with dates, but middle 60s. I would say that the Piranha Coffee House was the birthplace of the Chicano movement. There was nobody else doing that. There were organizations like, the voter rights people, things like that. And afterwards, what I noticed, they were just coming out of the woodwork, just, starting programs and things like that. But we were not accepted. It was very difficult. When people learned about brown berets, as time went on, they looked at as militant troublemakers. Okay, I remember in some of our training, they would say, one of the things that always stayed with me my entire life is never argue with somebody. It cuts your channel of communication. And that is so true. Once you start arguing, you're yelling about your feelings, you're yelling about your feelings, and nobody's going to come together and understand anything. So we were told, you're going to come across people that don't like you, and you're just going to have to take it, okay? And somebody who's already a little pissed off, that's like, you have to bite your tongue. And I remember we were sent to some gathering that was at East LA College Stadium, and we were supposed to pass out flyers about the Brown Berets, an event. And I remember this family, and I gave them a flyer, and the man got it, read it, he crumbled it up, he goes, Chicanos, and he threw it at my feet. And I just, that was one of those moments, but I just maintained myself, So it was hard in the beginning. Young people were very attracted to this kind of movement, activity, because we're...
I'm sorry, it reminds me in some ways of, the strategy of nonviolence and of having to hold yourself back.
Yes.
And you talked about being aware of the South and the sit-ins. And are there other ways in which you were all paying attention to other movements?
Sure. Yeah. There was already UMAS, which United Mexican American Students, was already being organized in the colleges. So there was some, movement within the schools. And, eventually, we tried to meet with all these different groups. Eventually it became, ex-convicts came out with Lucha, and other groups were forming, like the ones in the housing projects. La Junta was another group. But eventually everybody began fighting each other's. My philosophy is better than yours. I don't believe in what you believe in, blah, 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 blah. And I always tried to this, and it's very me, to try and get along with everybody. I always, even when I worked, would find the most difficult employee that everybody said, stay away from her. I would try to find out what makes this person tick. And they would be my friend, and people would say, how do you do that? And I go, just talk to them. They're usually in pain, carrying some anger, real anger, scary anger. But that's always been my kind of what I do, So I got along with everybody. Plus, it helped to have an uncle who was in the what they call the ex pinto. They came out of the prisons. He was in that group, so he told them, "That's my niece. Don't mess with her." So I got along with them just fine, And the other groups that Brown Berets are fighting with, I got along fine with them.
Were there connections across the lines of race to the Black Panthers or to
Absolutely.
other organizations?
Yeah, we used to go to US organization every Sunday to their, they would have a gathering, and it was a cultural, and it was beautiful to me to see them in their beautiful regalia and doing their dances and songs and speaking their language, Swahili, and they welcomed us with open arms. Black Panthers, it was more the men got involved with the Black Panthers. We did have, during the Watts Riot, a non-aggressive coalition pact. In other words, if violence goes down, we don't touch the Chicanos. If violence goes down in the Chicano community, you don't touch the Black people. That was an understanding. So, I do remember that. And I never went to any of the meetings, but I was aware of that. And, we just got so involved in the Brown Berets with community. And we opened a free clinic eventually. And that was started by David Sanchez, who was the prime minister. And he was meeting with the physicians for community action and psychologists for community action. They're mostly Anglo and Jewish people. And I had